Our keynote speaker today is Steve Hewitt. Steve's an ordained minister who early in his career recognized the importance of technology if we're going to advance the work of the church. In 1989, he founded Christian Computing Magazine. Now, if you don't subscribe to Christian Computing Magazine, you should. It's online. It's free. Need I say more? Wonderful articles every issue, most written by church workers like us, who are not going to talk in a high technical language, but we'll talk in a way that church workers can appreciate. It's really a very valuable tool in your attempt to introduce technology in your parish. Steve's also the founder and editor of American Church Magazine, which covers a broader gamut of church-related issues, also online, also free. Steve is also a prolific author. He's a regular interviewee on radio and television. So let's say much more. Let me introduce to you Mr. Church Computing, Steve Hewitt.
All right. Well, I'm delighted to get to be here. I'm just going to unplug that. Hopefully this technology will work. It's always embarrassing when it's me and it doesn't. We'll find out. Hey, look at that. Okay. I'm always excited when I do this, and I'm still getting used to using my iPad for this as opposed to a notebook computer. I'm delighted to get to be here, and it's going to be interesting. I would like to, if we have extra time, and they told me I could go a little longer, and I'm actually starting earlier, I wouldn't mind having some question and answer as well, because I hope to make your head spin a little bit. Not on purpose, it's just the fact of the way it is. I've done this for 25 years now. And when I look back, I remember meeting with crowds and telling them that Microsoft Windows was the way to go, you know, and people shook an angry fist at me. They really did. They did not want to go to Microsoft Windows. I'm like, I'm sorry. When Windows 3.1 came, everything changed. I saw a lot of church management software companies and Christian companies trying to provide technology that went under because they couldn't move from DOS to Windows. And 2 years after I told them, but it was inevitable. It was going to happen. I remember speaking on a technology. I'm laying a foundation for it. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to, because I'm going to lay some pretty heavy stuff on you. In fact, a couple of things I'm going to share I've never shared with anybody yet until today. So I remember being on a software panel at the Church Bookstore Association convention and on what's hot and what's not, and I told them that CD-ROMs were going to make it. And everybody on the panel after me explained why I was wrong, that CD-ROMs were never going to make it. And of course, you know, CD-ROMs did. I remember being at Hannibal Grain College at a Baptist event, talking to their technology student body, trying to explain about Windows and how they were going to be able to just install a printer and the driver would be there, and people just, it was blowing their minds. And I believe if it was 4 years ago and I was here, I was probably telling you that PCs were going to die. And I went to the Dallas National Association of Church Business Administrators. I'll be there again in January. I was there like 4 years ago and told them that PCs were going to die, that they're not even going to want a notebook. I asked them how many had a tablet. Nobody did. And I asked them at the beginning how many was going to be buying a notebook, and almost every hand went up. The next 2 years, there'd be a notebook. When the meeting was over with, I asked them how many was never going to buy a notebook again and was going to buy a tablet, and all the hands went up. So I try to let you know where technology is going. That's basically the purpose of what I try to do here. First of all, where it's not going. Microsoft's dying. Okay, so if you hear anything from Microsoft, you need to know that's not a good thing. Okay, when Microsoft bought Skype, for example, my first reaction was, I like Skype. Whenever they do anything, it's going to go down. They truly missed the whole move to mobile. When everybody was going mobile, you heard nothing from Microsoft. I mean, Bill Gates was the driving force behind Microsoft, and he did a great job until he got married. And once he got married, his wife wasn't interested. It's like, let's go tour the world, and he basically passed it off to a bunch of people who make over $1 million a year and are going to ride it out till they retire. So there's just no innovation really left with Microsoft. The best thing about their latest operating system is that it emulates the past operating system. They're trying to be Apple in every way they possibly can now. They've announced that, and now they're trying to be Apple. That's amazing. So now they're announcing that, first of all, they announced they were going to drop Dell and Compaq. They're going to come out with their own boxes. And then they're going to open up their own stores like Apple did. And they don't have geniuses in the back of the store. I forget what they call them, but it's an emulation trying to be the same thing Microsoft is. I mean, that Apple's is. This is crazy that Microsoft's trying to reinvent itself to somebody else who's also on the way down. So, they've admitted they're wrong. They've let their CEO go. They're trying to find a new direction. And of course, if you're using Internet Explorer, you're using the world's worst browser. I mean, you really are. I went to a church, they wanted to use a program called Media Shout because they wanted to do multimedia worship, and it was still a program you'd put on a computer. It's one of the few reasons you might still want to buy an old box. And so I went with them. We bought a brand new computer. I believe it was Dell. That's a good brand. We took it to their church. We set it up, and we connected to the internet. And we wanted to get the PowerPoint, the free PowerPoint thing that helps you run, like if someone gives you a PowerPoint presentation, you don't have PowerPoint, you can run it. We needed to download that so it would work with Media Shout. So on a brand new computer with a brand new version of Windows, using the Internet Explorer that came with it, which was Windows product, we went to the Windows Microsoft website and couldn't download the Windows PowerPoint emulator. The only way we could do it was to actually remove Internet Explorer, download, I think we downloaded Chrome or Firefox, and then we were able to actually get into the Microsoft site. So a brand new Microsoft computer using the brand new operating system, their browser couldn't connect with their own website. This is the Microsoft we live in now. So what about Apple? Well, sadly, Apple's used to be, remember those commercials that Apple was the cool guy and the PC was the frump, and they talked about it. And I remember in the years past when most of our readers were using Windows, we always said when the new versions of Windows came out, don't upload it, don't download it yet. Wait a little while and see what happens. That's exactly the case with Apple now. I mean, with Jobs gone, Apple's future is really in debate. I mean, Apple has dropped behind in hardware. They really have. Google or Android tablets and Android smartphones are much better than anything Apple has. I'm using an Apple iPad. I have an Apple phone, okay? I still like Apple. I still like the operating system because they have more apps. And I'll just tell you right now, if you're thinking about getting a smartphone, you're thinking about getting a tablet, and you're deciding should I go with Apple or should I go with Google Android, the answer is, what are your friends and family using? That's really it. Because they're going to say, hey, here's a great new app, and you're going to want to download it on your Android or your iPhone. If you have no friends and if you have no family, definitely go Android, okay? Because they're better machines, they're better hardware, they're better everything. I mean, you can find with better resolution, better file management, it's easy to connect full-size keyboards and everything to an Android. So Apple's really fallen behind. And it isn't pushing anything in the new innovation VIC, and you're going to hear a lot about VIC. Never heard about VIC? That's because I made that up. It's called Visual Interface Computing, okay? Someday you're going to see it everywhere else. I'm just ahead of them. Their latest operating system, released with major bugs. I've still got my iPad and my iPhone with that little number next to the general saying, come on, update, update. I'm not updating. It's a disaster to update to an Apple operating system until it's been out 6 months. I mean, they're fixing them. They're just like the old days of Windows. Why? Jobs is gone. So it's really sad, but I'm not much of an Apple fan either. So who's hot? Google's hot. If you hear Google doing anything, perk up. If you hear Google's heading in a direction, they bought something, and they're buying everything, okay? The head of General Motors 3 months ago said Google may kill General Motors because they're in the automotive business. I mean, Google is everywhere, and Google is hot. So they're the ones you're going to want to watch. I'm not suggesting stock investments. I never do that, but you can make your own opinions. Google purchased Quick Office. Quick Office was a replacement for Microsoft Office because Microsoft wasn't about to go with the mobile systems and wasn't going to let anybody have their office on a tablet or on an iPhone. Now, of course, now they've moved to the cloud, and so now that's possible, but Quick Office replaced them for a lot of people. They just said, look, we're tired of waiting for Microsoft, and then Google purchased Quick Office. Google's bought about everything. Google translators are the best in the world. They're the ones that help translate. They're working on a cell phone. You can just turn anybody in the world and say, here's my number, you know, and they'll know to call you. And you can talk in English and they can talk in Swahili or whatever, and they'll hear you instant translated. You'll hear them instant translated. They're talking 635 languages when they release it. Google Hangout, which was a great way to really do video chats with a bunch of people, except Google said, hey, the difference between Google and Apple is Apple gets something, they want a proprietary, they don't want anybody doing it. Okay, Google is like, okay, we'll make Hangout its own app, and you can actually get Hangout to work with an iPhone. And it's a great way to do video chats with multiple people. I use their calendar, their spreadsheet, all the Google Online. Here's what's really cool for me, because I'm 59 years old. They started the new company called Calico. Google has a lot of companies that they don't bring in as Google, but if you go check the company, Google owns them 100%. So Calico is a great company. You know why? Google looked at America and said, nobody else notices this, but America's getting older. Okay? So as we move forward with technology, we've got to make technology applicable to an older America. I love them. I absolutely love them. Okay, so that's why you're seeing about the Google driverless cars and all that kind of stuff. My mom and dad, my dad has just turned 92, my mom's 86, they can no longer drive. What an incredible crippling that is for their life. Just to go to the grocery store, just to be able to get to church, to a meeting, just to be able to go to the doctors. And I'm the closest relative. I'm about a 45-minute drive from them. So they have to use the Oates bus. It's terrible. That's never going to happen to me. That's never going to happen to me. Now, if you haven't noticed, now, Google cars are really weird. If you haven't noticed, everybody else now is producing cars that will brake automatically. If you run up on, you can't. I have a adopted 16-year-old girl, and took her out to drive she learned how to drive, took her out in the rain and lightning. She did fantastic. I was so proud of her. And then we pulled in the driveway, and she got ready she's pulling in the driveway. We slowed way down. Then at the last minute, all of a sudden, she floored it, and we ran into the house. And she thought maybe her foot was on the wrong brake. She got a little questionable at that moment and ran into the house, and it was a Camry. However, future cars won't do that. I mean, they're already out there. You can buy a car now. You can get right up by your house, floor it, and it will not drive into your house. We're already getting these things on other models. The Google car looks like a small Volkswagen. There's not even a steering wheel in the Google car. I mean, you just get in the thing, tell it where you want to go, and you play Yahtzee while you're getting there, and have a good time. I mean, you can swivel the chairs to face somebody else. That is going to be the future, and Google's led that drive. Now, everybody's trying to catch up with that, and it probably will really scare General Motors. And then the biggest thing is VIC, Visual Interface Computing. I'm talking Google Glass. Now I'm going to make a bet that probably nobody here has Google Glass. Does anybody actually have some? You should you should be speaking after me. So there's someone that actually has Google Glass. That's awesome. This is where I'm going to blow you away. Google Glass is the way you're all going to interface in probably 8 to 9 years. So 4 years ago, I was telling you to get rid of your PC and get a tablet. How many of you now have a tablet or a smartphone? See, that's almost everybody. If you don't, talk to us later. We can fix you up or something. The fact of the matter is, that's going to be old technology in 2 or 3 years, and Google Glass visual interface is going to replace that. Now, there's some reasons why visual interface is not taking off yet. And the biggest thing is you have a little attachment on your glasses, or you can wear glasses. If you don't wear glasses, you can buy a Google Glass. They're now making them so that they actually will look like regular glasses. You really can't tell. The biggest problem is you have to say, like Siri on talking. You have to say, okay, look up Google Glass while he's talking. You want to know what Google Glass is. So you say, look up Google Glass. And you see a little screen out here everywhere you go. It's right over here. It's like a heads-up display for a fighter pilot. And it's your same monitor that you'd see if you was looking at your tablet. And you could say, okay, Google Glass. And then you'd be looking at it. You'd scroll down, scroll up, select this. And you could do all that, but you have to talk. So can you imagine if we had a room full of people with Google Glass right now? It'd be a real headache, okay? Let's not even get there yet. Let's just talk about how that's going to change the world. So if I could be wearing a pair of glasses and I can interface anything anywhere on the internet I ever need to go, how is this going to change school? Do I need to know that Christopher Columbus discovered America? If I'm having coffee with some people one day and somebody goes, hey, who discovered America? I could go, who discovered America? Oh, hey, it's a guy named Christopher Columbus. I mean, the need for education in the past has been because our mind is our computer. We access everything, we put everything in our mind. In the future, you're going to have instant access to the internet. And you'll be able to take pictures, you'll be able to start videos. I could be doing this right now where you're talking, and I could have just posted 4 pictures to Facebook of you in this group. So it's going to be, except I'd be having to go picture or video, and then I have to say Facebook. Okay? But I'm going to tell you how come that's going to change. The fact of the matter is, I'm telling you that in the future, visual interface computing is going to be the next step. My 25 years of history tells me so. It's 8 to 10 years away, which means it's probably going to be sooner, but I like to put it out there for a while. And it's going to change everything. So already, many states have passed laws about Google Glass, visual interface computing. Some don't want you to drive with it. They think it might be a distraction. Others actually are going to want you to drive with it, because Google Glass can also measure your attentiveness. They can tell you if you're looking down at the speedometer, if you're looking around, or if you just all of a sudden got, psyched out and you're driving and you've fallen asleep. So there's a lot of things Google Glass can do. Google Glass can record on a constant loop. So all of a sudden there's an accident. You've got the last 30 seconds of what took place in your life. Everywhere you go, we got security cameras. Now imagine everywhere you go, you've got Google Glass. So if you're assaulted or anything, imagine the ability to have facial recognition in Google Glass, so that you're at church or you're anywhere and you see people and you go, hey, Jim, I haven't seen you for 6 months, 3 days, and how's your cat? Because it was on the roof. I mean, you'll have all that information. So no one will be going up and going, I'm sorry, what's your name? Because as you just go through, it'll center on each picture. It'll give you the name, tell you the last time you talked, was there a prayer request, last time you saw each other. Imagine how popular we're going to be at the door as we greet people going in and out of church. I mean, we're going to seem like the most personal people in the world, except everybody's going to know what you're doing because everybody's going to have it as well. So, but it's going to eliminate that thing. So you'll have facial recognition everywhere you go. It's going to change everything, okay? It's all about mobile computing these days. It's about apps, it's not about programs. And note to Microsoft, after they finally got into it and realized, oh my gosh, we missed the mobile revolution, they started calling all of their programs apps. An app and a program is 2 different things. A program is what you walk into Best Buy and you buy in a box and you take home and install. That's a program. Always has been a program. Best Buy used to have about this much space in every one of their stores just for programs. Now Best Buy has this much space for all of their programs because there isn't much to get on there, except you buy a new computer, you have to protect it with Norton, and you have to buy all this stuff to keep it. There's no new programs for a computer. So once again, Microsoft sort of infuriated a lot of people when they started calling everything they did an app, okay? And an interesting thing about how we're moving to mobile, we just did a survey of Christian computing users, and we said, how is your primary way of studying the Bible? Do you use print? Do you log on to the computer and you downloaded a computer program on your computer? Do you log on to the internet and go to an online Bible program? That was the smallest percent. Or do you access, your primary way of studying the Bible is through a tablet or through a smartphone? Over 50% of our readers said the primary way, in fact, smartphone was right behind tablet, which really amazed me because our audience is primarily pastors and church leaders. So what they're saying is primarily their number 1 source for studying the Bible is their smartphone or their tablet. That is number 1, over 50%. So we've obviously changed a lot about the way we're computing. It's about mobile computing in a lot of other ways as well. Mapping and location aware is about to get better. They put up more satellites, so where they used to be able to tell you were over there, now they're able to tell you're here. I mean, that's a big deal, but they're getting that much better. And of course, now they triangulate everything you do with your cell phone, which is good and which is bad. For protection, if you're trying to get off the grid, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult. I'm going to disappear in about 3 years. That's my goal, actually. And we've actually looked at how you're going to do this. Almost impossible. You cannot have an iPhone, for example. There's a reason iPhone batteries don't come out. You cannot completely shut your iPhone off. You shut your iPhone off and you think no one's tracking you, you're wrong. They can still track you with your iPhone completely off. Only an Android phone where you can actually remove the battery. So if you go into a battered women's shelter and you have an iPhone, the first thing they're going to tell you is they're going to re-clean it, because it's very easy to put tracking software anonymously from somebody who wants to turn your phone on and listen, turn your camera on and view what you're doing, and of course they can track you even with it off. So battered women's shelters, many of them advise their women to come in and get rid of your iPhone to start with, and get an Android phone and take the battery out and only put it in when you want to be making a phone call, because you don't want to be tracked if that's a concern. So that's all gotten much better. Good or bad. And of course now most printers are being sold as e-printers, so you don't have to be connected through a big box to a cable and a printer cable. I can print right here from my tablet. I could print this off at my home printer or my office or whatever. Just really simple to do. So that's how we're doing. And Apple TV, it rocks. I don't even know if we had that 4 years ago. Apple TV, first of all, is not a TV, so that everybody goes in looking for an Apple TV. It's about the size of your iPhone. In fact, it's not this wide. It's about that thick, though, and it's just a little box. And it has a place for you to do plug in the power and plug in HDMI, and it's Wi-Fi enabled. Now, this means that I can walk into a room that's got Apple TV. I wouldn't need this cable. I would just be doing this presentation Wi-Fi, and it'd be showing up there. Okay, so Apple TV allows me to log into my iTunes. It allows me to log into Netflix. It allows me to log into Hulu. It allows me to buy movies, all this kind of stuff, and display it on any monitor. Why is that really cool for churches? Because it also displays any app. So like I'm using Keynote, you could put PowerPoint presentation up, you could put anything from YouTube up, you can put anything anywhere on the internet, any app up there. There's a thing called Penultimate. I like that as an app. It's a whiteboard. And I could just have a whiteboard right now, and my little stylus pen, I could be drawing the Red Sea and where they went across, and all, and you'd be having a whiteboard. You know what it costs to buy a whiteboard for a church? It's electronic and all that kind of stuff for a school, like $3,000 to $4,000. Apple TV is $99. Okay, so I've been to a lot of churches down south in Texas. Every Sunday school room has an Apple TV. All their conference rooms have an Apple TV. They just sit on top of the projector, wherever the projector, they're back there. They sit on top of the projector. So anybody that walks in is teaching a Sunday school class. There's a lot of great Christian music on YouTube. There's a lot of great videos. Some of you know, you're nodding your head. There's a lot of them. So you could be in a little Sunday school room in your little church, and you could play either a children's song, or you could play some really cool worship music, or there's all kinds of illustrations and stuff you could just play to supplement whatever class you're teaching and have it right up on the screen, because where you go to church has Apple TVs everywhere. So it's really about that. And like I said, we're seeing churches actually put Apple TVs throughout the building with Wi-Fi for that very reason. And then cloud computing's everywhere. I mean, that's why mobile rocks. So even now, Microsoft Office is finally available because it's in the cloud. Adobe Photoshop in the cloud. Even the high-level programs, when I used to talk about mobile computing was coming, people are like, yeah, but how can you use Photoshop, or how can I use this? They're all on the internet, and they're all on the cloud. You can get down the apps. They work very, very well. There's still a few applications you need a desktop for. I'm aware of that. But it's not how America is computing. America is computing with tablets and mobile devices and e-printers. They don't even have desktops in their computer in their homes anymore. So you don't need it in your business nearly as well. I found this interesting. In 2013, remember that year, last year, the amount of data that was transmitted mobile doubled, almost doubled, and it's expected to double this year. Now, if you start doubling stuff, it gets pretty big pretty quick. So we're obviously downloading and accessing a lot of stuff online just from the, so if you're like mad at your provider, AT&T or Sprint or whoever, like, gee, it seems like you're not getting faster. They have to double their speeds and double their occupancy every year to just stay normal, just to stay where they're at. So it's quite a challenge coming up for them. All right, let's see, interfaces. Smart watches, I don't like them, so we'll just move on. Let's talk a little bit more about visual interface, Google goggles, and why it's really going to change things. Here's a couple things being worked on. Contacts. Google Glass can run up to 5 hours on a contact. You literally put a contact on your eyeball, and it's like putting your tablet on your eyeball, and it actually projects on the corner of the contact. It projects, and you see everything. So you're walking around. So if we do contacts, how are we going to know if someone's got Google Glass? I mean, this is an interface that's not going to be stopped. By the way, of course, obviously Las Vegas, has outlawed Google Glass and visual interface computing, because you can imagine the ability you have to count cards and do all that kind of stuff. It is going to change everything. So someone's got contacts and they're in your church and you're preaching what may be your best sermon ever, but the game's on. It's going to change everything. It's going to change everything. Now, when I've talked about Google Glass in the past, everybody's like, yeah, but everybody's going to be talking, it's going to be a mess. How can you say this is going to make it? Because I've been tracking something else. It's called thought control, TIC, thought interface computing. Now, when this first happened, I was very amazed by it, and I've been following and tracking it ever since. What they originally did was they had 10 people who were going to have surgery for epilepsy. They were actually going to go in and divide the main nerve between the two halves of the brain, which really helps in epilepsy. It's going to have this open brain surgery. And they asked these 10 people, would they submit to allowing some things to be implanted inside their brain that would allow them maybe to have thought control and control a computer. They all agreed, and after the surgery and after the recovery, they wheeled in computers, and in 30 minutes, the people were able to totally control their computer. They were able to type, they were able to move the cursor and select stuff on the web, they were able to do all this kind of stuff. Fascinating. So soon they developed the ability to shave the head and put the interfaces on the outside of the head, and people were able to do that as well. Now they've invented caps. You can put a cap on, you know, and you're wearing a hat, and you're able to look at a computer that's prepared for you, and you can move the cursor around, you can select things. It's not like you can just type, okay? You have to type moving the cursor to T, moving the cursor to H, moving the cursor to E to type the word V. Just kind of like we have to do with our fingers, okay? So I saw this coming, and I realized it made sense that Google Glass is so good, but the problem is we can't all be talking. It'd be a real disruption. What if you combine TIC with VIC, and that's what I do for a living for the last 25 years. That made total sense to me. That is the direction we're going to go. And I've been saying this for 2 years, and everybody looks at me with rolled eyes like, yeah, sure. You know, that's the new interface. We're going to think stuff and make it happen. I have a hard time believing that that's really going to happen. Well, this came out a couple months ago. That's a person with Google Glass and a thought control device. And wearing that, I know it's archaic, we're not going to be wearing those, believe me. I'm talking 8 or 10 years from now, and it's going to be invisible. But wearing that device, the person can think, take a picture or take a video. And their Google Glass takes a picture and takes a video. Then the person's able to control it. They want that picture posted on Facebook or Twitter. They want to send it out. They can control that without ever saying a word, without ever doing anything except looking around the room. Because that one little touch on the forehead is able to read controls. Now what they do is you don't think, take a picture, you think, turn on, and on the screen you all of a sudden see a little thing, and you concentrate, it goes up when it hits a certain concentration, and you make it stop. It takes a picture or starts a video, and then your choice is Facebook or Twitter. You think which one you want. If you want to post it, you immediately post it, and you're now taking pictures and nobody knows you're taking pictures. So you're starting videos and stopping videos and sending them to Twitter. Nobody even knows you're doing it. I know that looks dorky, and we're not going to be doing that, but I'm telling you, did you ever see Windows version 1? Anybody? I did. It was incredibly dorky. And it was incredibly, Windows 2 didn't make it either. In fact, Windows 3 didn't make it. It was finally when Windows 3.1 made it that everything took off. And even then, I know, it was slow. I had already started publishing the magazine back in the early 1989. I think I had Windows 3.1 in the early 90s, and I had PageMaker. And so you would desktop publish a page of the magazine, and then you wanted to start the next page. You'd tell it to flip the page, and you'd go to lunch. Because it would take that long to flip the page and redraw the new one. It was clunky, it was old, it was really incredibly bad, but it was also the direction we were going. This is the direction we're going, I'm telling you now, and it's going to change everything in the way we do this. If people have this ability to have complete access to the internet, using their thought control to do whatever they want, how does that impact everything we do? From driving to shopping to church to school. It's going to change our society in big, 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 big ways. I don't have all the answers of how it's going to change. I don't have all the answers of what we're supposed to do with this. But school can't be the same. There's no way school's going to be the same, where you're going to go and sit in a class and you're going to take a test or something like that. If you have complete access to the internet in a contact in your eye, and you can thought control what you're looking for, and that is what I'm telling you is coming. in 8 to 10 years. I'm 59 years old. I don't have to worry about it as much as some of you, okay? But it's definitely going to change things in a lot of ways, okay? If we have time for questions, you have any questions about that later, I'll be happy to answer. I'm going to change the subject to something else now, but visual interface computing is one of the things I'm telling you is going to change. And by the way, it's not Google Glass. Go look for a wearable visual computing. You'll see there's like 20 companies out there producing these. Google is just the one that's leading. But everybody around the world is moving to this. They're moving to glasses and visual interface computing, except I'm the only one calling it what it is. They're calling it wearable computing. So you won't find it if you look for VIG. But I'm telling you down the road, they're all going to come my way. So let's switch the subject a little bit about where we're at today in communication. This was 1989 when I started the magazine. These are the ways you would communicate and broadcast information. Newspapers, radio, send a letter, pagers. Remember pagers? I remember my late father-in-law is like my best friend. He got one of the first pagers back in the 80s. And so you could always test it. And he wasn't a doctor. He was the accountant for Cartwright Van Lines. And he loved technology. He's the one that got me my first computer and got me started and everything. I remember he'd sit in a restaurant and you'd see his hand go down and he'd push the tester and then his pager go off and he'd like, oh, wow, okay. Because no one was paging him. But he bought the thing and he wanted to have fun. And he's the first one that got me my first cell phone too. You carried around a briefcase with batteries and the cell phone. It was huge. It was so portable. CB radio, magazines, faxes, books, TV. That's sort of it. That's how you disseminate your information. Christians tried TV. They didn't do very good at it. They've done a little bit better with radio. Most of these things is how we communicated, how you got information. So obviously, if you wanted information about God, you wanted information about how God could help your life, you went to church. Because, or you got a Christian magazine, or there were some Christian newspapers, or you listened to Christian radio, or you'd call somebody. You'd read books. I mean, that was it. This is how we got information. Okay? This is today. And this doesn't even begin to cover everything. I just put major stuff up there that I know. Pinterest and podcasts, webinars, smartphones, digital publishing, faxes, Twitter, books, streaming video, Netflix, World Wide Web, PowerPoint, CNN text. That's how I get my news now. I don't watch the news on TV. I get texts tell me what happened. And it's because they go on forever. I drove here using satellite radio and listened to Fox and CNN a lot. And the only thing that's happening in America right now, the good news, there's been no crimes. Nothing's happening but what's happening with ISIS and the Ebola thing. That's kind of it. That's all they reported all day long. You know, Xbox is its own communication tool, and some people, their source of information, their connection with relationships and friendships totally through Xbox. That's it. That's it. Now, how many of you as a church are reaching out to people through Xbox? So what are those people just cut off? Are they in a foreign missionary field now? Are they in there? Because that's how they communicate. I know people, that's all they do. Instant messaging, Facebook. So we have got a challenge ahead of us today because everything has changed in the way we communicate. And I'm a magazine publisher. My magazines are free because no one should be paying for a magazine today. We're hanging on by the thread of our teeth, you know, and the skin of our teeth, hanging on by a thread. One of those two, mix them up. And then, you know, the whole communication way is this, it's all changed. So as a church, we have to consider the fact that that's how people are communicating and not the way they used to want to get communication. And it has to do with something that can be good news or bad news. It's up to you. We are in the personal communication age. Which means people don't want to get news from Dan Rather standing in Iraq telling us what ISIS is doing. I guess that's about the only way we can really figure out what's going on over there, but quite honestly, we're very bored. Between my wife and I, we have 5 grown sons. There's not a one of them, and they're all 30s, they're all 30, 35, there's not a one of them that know who ISIS is because they have all turned off the news a long time ago. Their total them and their wives and my grandkids, their total source of information comes from instant messaging, it comes from Facebook, and it comes from their friends. 2 of them still attend church, but they do not attend worship service or church. They just go to the Sunday school because they like the connection they get with the people in the small group, and then they leave. They don't attend worship service. I think and they live all across the United States, from North Carolina to a lot of them are in Missouri and all around. I think they're pretty good sampling of their age group. And everything we get now is from personal communication. We just want people to, I mean, nobody got up on 9/11 and got the evening newspaper and opened it up and discovered that the World Trade Center had been hit by planes. We all found out about it because somebody called us, somebody texted us, someone let us know. That was 13 years ago, 14 years ago. I mean, today, that's how we get all of our information. We get it through text, we get it through somebody talking to us. Here's the good news. Jesus lived in a time when personal communication was king. There was no TV, there was no radio, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no Xbox even. So people followed him and he talked, and that was the way. Word of mouth is how it did. And then later on, of course, the letters that became the books of the Bible, and they traveled. But mainly, it was the personal communication age was not there. Jesus did it. We need to learn to do it as well. That's why the scripture we just heard in this, I mean, he went to the Pharisees' house. He was with people. He talked to people. He connected with people. And they followed him, and he stopped and he talked. And also the other thing you'll notice constantly in the Gospels, a lot of question and answer. Jesus didn't preach a sermon and then say, okay, now you can all leave. They questioned him. They asked him questions. Sometimes the disciples afterwards, and then sometimes, look how many times the people that didn't follow him, but that was there, interested in what he said enough, but they challenged him constantly with questions and answers. It was that personal communication. There was no, I'm sorry, I'm done, and you need to leave. That's just the way it was. Now because of information and media overload, personal communication is king again. That's the way. That's why Facebook made it. That's why social media is making it. And here, I got another class to follow, but here's the bad news. So a lot of churches are being encouraged to jump into social media because, hey, it's the personal communication age. A church cannot, as an institution, use social media to communicate its message. They can't. And attend my session. Now everybody's attending a session. Next session's going, wait a minute, I don't get to advertise. So sorry. Now the good news is traditional preaching. It's not good for traditional preaching, but if you understand how to use personal communication, it can be. So I'm going to give you some examples that I'm seeing people use across the nation. Okay? Make yourself available for question and answer after service. That's huge. And everything else. Okay, why has blogs replaced articles? Because you can leave a comment afterwards. They don't like an article. An article's dead. The whole idea of sending a letter to the editor and then somebody puts a controversial article in a newspaper and they get 1,000 letters to the editor and they pick 3. You want to be able to ask a question. You want to be able to leave a comment. You want to be able to say, I think you're wrong. That's why blogs have replaced articles. That's why YouTube has comments afterwards. If you post a YouTube video and you don't allow comments, people are not even going to watch it. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't work. You have to. And Facebook, every time you post your status, people get to leave comments. They get to, well, I'm having a terrible day. Please pray for me. And then all your friends are like, what's happened? What's wrong? And then you can comment back, and this discussion starts. That's how people want to communicate. So the concept of, I have a message for you, sit quietly and listen to it, and now the message is over, you now get to leave. It's still working. It's still working. But you know that the population of America goes up 4.5% every year, and the number of people who attend 2 church services a month, just 2 church services a month, is down to 12%, and has died 2% every year since 1970. I'll be speaking at the Future of the Church Summit next week in Colorado. I've spoken for 3 years. That's why I started the American Church magazine, because besides technology, I'm very concerned about where the church is going and why we're dying. We're losing 2% every year, and that's people who just attend 2 services a month. So is America turning away from God? Is America turning away from Christ? Catholic and Protestant? Are we just not caring? Here's some interesting statistics. 60% of America, 70% of America says they're Christian. 60% of America, you're like, well, they're not in church, they're not a very good Christian. 60% of America says they pray every day. 25% of America who says, I will not darken the door of a church, reads their Bible on a daily basis. And surprisingly, that's a higher percent than people who go to church. 51% of America is still walking into Christian bookstores and buying Christian books other than the Bible. 51%. And like in our area, there's a K-Love and there's Christian radio stations. The K-Love stations, they've done some surveys and they found out that 35 to 45% of their audience does not attend church, but they love Christian radio. So something's happening somewhere that Christianity's not dying in America. Christianity appears to be alive and well. If 60% are praying every day, 51% are reading Christian books, 28% of Americans said they connected with God and other Christians in a home environment or small group environment that was not sponsored or endorsed by a church. America is voting with their feet that they want to have personal communication when it comes to their Christianity. That's all they want. That's the only thing that's missing. They want personal communication. They want to say, but what about this? Or this happened in my life, and this is how it impacted me. So these are some examples. Most of my examples, of course, are from Protestants on that side. But First Baptist Church Orlando, big church, big church. Last year they instituted a new thing. They just shortened everything in their worship service so they'd have 10 or 15 minutes extra. And when you come in and you get the bulletin or on these screens, it tells you if you have any question about God or you have any question about today's sermon, Twitter it to this Twitter account. And then during the service, there's somebody back there getting these all these Twitters, and they pick several. And at the last 10 minutes of the service, after they've actually closed, then the pastor takes 10 or 15 minutes to answer questions, and nobody goes home. Nobody goes home. This is why talk radio works. You may never call a talk radio station, but what you like about talk radio is it's somebody like you who's called in and asked a question or made a comment. You can relate to that. So you'd rather listen to talk radio than somebody just talking on radio. We need that personal, I see you're all shaking your heads. You need that personal communication. So that's one of the ways. Another idea, I was talking to a friend of mine in a very traditional Southern Baptist church. And then I went to Harrisonville, Missouri, and started checking churches out and discovered over half the churches in Harrisonville, Missouri, little country place, South Kansas City, has done this same thing. They simply reversed their worship time with Sunday school time. They simply reversed it. They only have one Sunday school or Bible study time, classes, and they have one worship time. They reversed them. Why? Well, now when you come to worship, you know that afterwards there'll be one class where either the pastor or the priest or whatever will actually be there to answer questions about the sermon. So now it's sort of changed. When the pastors are preaching their sermon, they're thinking, I wonder what I'm going to get asked. So they're sort of preparing for the question and answer afterwards. It gives them that time. And then here's something anybody can do. After you've posted, after you've done your message, it needs to be recorded. Videotape, record. It's so easy to do that now. An informal video works great. So you could have somebody in the middle of the congregation holding up an iPhone, and it would, I don't care, just video record the message. And as soon as that message is over with, that somebody cannot go to lunch until they post that on Facebook. And you let everybody know. Listen, if you have questions or you have comments about today's message or any part of our service, feel free to go to Facebook and you can leave comments. Yes?
I'm trying to understand reversing worship with Sunday.
Yeah, traditional churches, they have Bible study or Sunday school first, then they all go to worship and they go home. They're simply changing the schedule. They're putting the worship study, the worship time first, and you're going from 9 to 10:30, and then people can go home. But those that with kids or those that go to adult Bible study classes, they stay afterwards, and they have one class specifically to discuss whatever the message was that day. So people now, when they can come and hear the message, and then if they have questions afterwards, they can ask those questions of the pastor or the priest and actually dialogue and get some dialogue. Adam Hamilton did something. He's the largest Methodist church in America, and he did something where he was doing a controversial series on purpose in order to draw attention, and then he announced that every service, following the service, there'd be a 30-minute opportunity just to ask him questions. And so he did 3 services in a row, I think. So after he did the first service, he went to another part of the building, about room this big, if I remember right, because I went to check it out. While the song service is starting for the next worship service, he stayed there, and he answered questions for 30 minutes. Then he went back in the pulpit, preached the same sermon again, then came back here, and while the next service was starting, he answered questions for 30 minutes. Do you know in the 3rd week, he had the Kansas City Star and had hundreds of people coming to the question and answer series? That was 5 years ago. But they were fascinated by the fact that after they heard a message, they could actually ask questions about that message. There was a reason to listen. There was a reason to absorb it. There was a reason to make it live, because I'm going to get to comment. I'm going to say, not even a question maybe. You talked about Noah and how he was confused. And I went through an experience like that. And they get to share that. They want to share. We're all about sharing today. Everybody's on Facebook. Everybody wants to share. If the church says, we don't give you an opportunity to share, we don't care what you have to say, is what you're saying. We don't want you to ask a question because maybe we won't have the answer. That's the observation. And we have the answers. So it's something we need to do. We've moved into the personal communication age. I got a prediction for you. My prediction is all this is going to collapse. This is one I'm more strong about Google Glass making it than this. Okay, I predict that in a couple of years, Stanford University and some others have come out with studies and said that Facebook's going to collapse, Twitter's going to collapse. Everybody's going to realize the fallacy of all this, and maybe just the turn away from mass media to personal communication has become so confusing and so splintered. Many people may actually turn back. Won't that be great if they do? I mean, if they turn back to traditional sources, print magazines are going to come back, and people are going to start even more will attend church and like the traditional worship service, if that's what you've got. But right now, we've still got a problem with it. Okay? Personal communication, these are the 5 best ways I know of for a church to communicate. These are the 5 best ways. And I'm telling you they're right. I'm just telling you they're right. All the statistics are in. Text messaging is the number one by far. By the way, these are not like, well, this is like 90%, and the next one's 80%, the next one's set. No, this is 100%. The next one is half of the impact. Okay? If you want to get a message to your congregation, the best way, I would say the only way, is to start using text messaging. Now, I'm going to ask the question, is anybody at their church using text message where they text message to either the youth or a group or the choir or anything? Anybody? Good for you guys. Okay, there's 3 or 4. Text messages are received by 99.7% of everybody within 30 seconds. If you got a message to get there, how are you sending it? How are you getting your message out? And I know, well, we do this, we do that, and it doesn't work. Nobody gets that message. Now, many of you have already. I remember last time I was here 4 years ago, there was a couple of older priests, and they just, I had their heads spinning afterwards. They said, you know what? I'm going to retire. So I know you may feel that way, and many people will balk me on this text messaging. Oh, well, our people are old. Our people don't text. Our people. Let me tell you something. So 5 years ago. Actually, I'm wrong at that. It's more like 6 or 7 years ago. My wife and I was at a church, and when I joined churches and move around a lot, and I attend churches all across the nation. And this church was local to us. We decided to just try to get involved and do some ministry. And when you join that church, that's the first thing they ask. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because you're not just going to come and sit. What are you going to do? And I said, well, we have a real passion for adult singles, older singles our age, 50s and 60s, who are either widowed or they've been divorced. 50% of all America is divorced and struggling through that. So we'd like to have a singles ministry for that. They said, okay. We started the singles ministry on Friday night. We went through relationship books like Boundaries and Attachments and Janet Beverly's Creating Loving Relationships, which is just a local author, but I love that book. And Safe People book. These were for 50s and 60s. That was the people that came, singles. And we had about 13 people, 13, 12, 13, almost every week, different ones, but that's what we averaged. And my wife said, look, it's Friday night, let's get some dinner. Let's go get some tacos, or I'll make lasagna or spaghetti. So we started including dinner, okay? And for a year, we ran 12 or 13. And then 6, 7 years ago, I said, we need to incorporate text. I want to see if I can get it to work with this group, because they're all 50s and 60s. So we announced at one of the meetings, we said, look, here's the deal. We want to start texting you. We're going to just text you 1 time a week. We're going to remind you the meeting's on Friday. We're going to tell you what chapter we're on, and we're going to remind you what's for dinner, so you can kind of get in the mood for it. What tacos and lasagna is different. You got to get in the mood for it. So their answer was, we're old, we don't text. And my answer is, meet Jimmy, he's 13. Okay, hand your cell phone to Jimmy. He's going to set you up. You'll receive our texts, okay? And you don't have to ever text anybody. But all of a sudden, your phone's going to go ding dong, and you're going to look down. It's going to say, the meeting's tonight at 7. We're on chapter 13, and today we're having spaghetti, okay? Hope to see you there. So trust us. You're going to like this. We had one lady who had a business cell phone. The only cell phone she had was provided by her company. They didn't allow her to text. This became so popular that she actually went out and bought another cell phone, just a local, and had her own account so she could receive our texts on Friday nights. It became that important to everybody. What happened to the group, all those 13 people? Then we got to meet in the lobby of the church when service was over for the singles ministry, because there's a lot of them that came, but we just didn't have them all at one time, And so we had them come up, and little Jimmy took their cell phones and set up texting. I don't care, AT&T, whatever, Jimmy could do it. And we set everybody up for texting. In 3 months, we averaged 33 to 35. One guy by the name of Bob was coming. Bob, I always saw him as an usher at the church. He was retired, but he also started a second business of repairing lawnmowers. Bob came 3 times the year before we started texting. 3 times. And then when we started texting, Bob's there like every Friday night. I'd always be out in front meeting people, and Bob came in. I said, Bob, it's so good. This is like 5 or 6 weeks in a row you're making it. Are you really liking this book? And he goes, I've always liked what you guys do, but I forget. I mean, I'm active in the church, but by come Friday night, I forget that you're having dinner and you're having this. Now, it's 5 o'clock. My text goes off and says, hey, you're having, hoagie sandwiches, and we're on chapter 7. I think I need to clean up. And he starts making the meeting, simply because texting is the way to communicate. You can broadcast text a lot of different ways. If you got a message and you know that 99.7% of the people are going to see that message in a very short time, why would you not be texting? Don't let people, I remember the same thing with email. I've been here 25 years. I remember when email came out. Nick Nicolau, who's writes for our company, he didn't believe email would make it. I'm like, email's going to make it. Email's the way to go. And I talk to churches and like, well, our people don't have computers. Everybody has an excuse not to use technology, even though technology works. You know it works. Statistically, it works. It's ridiculous with the excuses, okay? So the second way, broadcast voice messages. I really think that's pretty cool because at least it gets the message out. One Call Now and Phone Tree, they provide broadcast voice messages. You think people don't like that because everybody's doing all kinds of telemarketing, but it still works because it's personal. By the way, texts are personal. Here, okay, let me go back because I got a little more time. Personal communication only has to be perceived. Write that down if you're taking notes. Personal communication only has to be perceived as personal. Doesn't mean it's really personal, but if it's perceived as personal, it works. Let me give you an example. Sociologists have discovered this. I'm going to take it totally out of the church market. You're all here at a dental clinic conference, and I'm speaking on why you should floss more. And let's say I do such a great job, and it's a fantastic message on why you should floss more, and let's say I impact 10% of you, and you decide to floss more. And you're here. You paid money, by the way, to get here, to hear me do this 1-hour lecturing on flossing more, and 10% of you change your lives and you floss more. If I take that same message and it's recorded, even audio as a podcast, and we put it on the internet and we charge money for people to download that podcast and listen, and the same number of people listen to this message on why you should floss your teeth in a podcast, you know what the percent of people it'll impact? 20%. Now just absorb that for a minute. We have a message to get out to people, and if they come and sit and listen to it in a large audience and we impact 1%, if we put it on a podcast, we're going to impact 2%. If our message impacts 15% live, it's going to impact 30% if they listen to it on a podcast. You know why? It's perceived personal. That little thing I told you to write down, that's hugely important. It's perceived as personal. Sociologists say that what happens is when you come to a meeting, you don't really feel like I'm talking directly to you. You know, I'm talking to a group of people. So your mind will go, well, that's baloney. I don't think I'm ever going to wear glasses or whatever, you know, or you do something else. But if you download the podcast and you're going to listen to it while you're driving to work, or you're going to sit in your easy chair, you're listening to it at your time, your convenience, and it comes across as I'm just talking to you because you're the only one listening, even though it's recorded. Sociologically, in our minds, it's a perception of personal. So you know why texting works? Well, if you get texting, how many of you receive texts from family and friends? See, that's most of you. So it's personal, isn't it? Now, when you get a text from me reminding you that this Friday night, hey, our meeting's at 7 o'clock, don't forget, we're having a fish, and it's on whatever, even though I might have broadcast that out to 50 people, the perception is personal. And this is the personal communication age. So in some way, if we make our message with the perception that is personal, it's received. This third one's really tough. When all computing started back in the 80s, it was started so that churches could use the computer to take their membership and sort their addresses, so when we put it on newsletters and letters and we sent it out, we could use our nonprofit permit. That's how computer technology in the church started. It was a great reason, okay? If you are sorting your letters going out to your congregation, if you're using a postal meter, okay, if you're using labels, and all this is to save you money, you just lost all your money. It doesn't save you anything. The open rate of that kind of stuff is so low now that it's incredible. It's a waste of money. So put something in there, send out something and say, hey, free car. If you call the next 30 minutes after you get that day, and then sit by the phone all day and see how many calls you get, you're going to discover that such a small percent is opening your church. If you have to open that envelope up or you're opening that newsletter, such a small percent that it's going to break your heart. And when you do all that kind of stuff, you think you're saving money because everybody wants it. They signed up for the newsletter. No, they don't. They're overloaded. They came home from work and they got 20 things to read. Way too much junk mail. And they go through their mail, and you do too. You go through your mail, and if you see a stamp on something and you see it's personally addressed, you set that aside and you open that. You open that up. Yeah, you're all shaking your head. You open that up. But you don't open all that other stuff. I asked for something at Shoes for Less, but I really don't care right now. All this stuff, all this church stuff. Personally addressed snail mail is actually a great way to communicate to people, but you have to do it right. You have to, even the letter inside, use a font that looks like it's hand, and they've got some really clever ones now that actually can rotate the letters around so it looks more like it's handwritten. Okay, on the outside, you can try. If you use a handwritten font and you put it on a label, you have just shot yourself in the head, okay? You have to hand address the envelope, and you have to hand address the response. I get so much stuff for refinancing my house that it's incredible, and one got through the other day because it had a stamp on it, and it was hand addressed, and it had a return address. And my wife goes, you got suckered. Look at it carefully. I started looking at the letters, and they all were the same. They were a font, but the return address was crooked, like they wrote downhill. That was enough to get me to open that letter because I thought it was personal. If you want to get your message out, you really have to go back to the old ways. Call volunteers. You don't care as long as the post office can read the address, you don't care. Get it out there. The more hand addressed it looked, the better. It actually works. And anything else you're selling out with metered mail is really, quite honestly, a waste of time. And then, yes, you should have a Facebook. You should have a website. You should have a YouTube. You should be on all those. But you know what? These are places you need to be to communicate your basic message, not to really connect with people. I'm going to tell you in my session how you can use Facebook. I'll tell you how to use Twitter. But quite honestly, most people are using it wrong. And the church that thinks I'm going to have a Facebook site so I can interact with my congregation is making a huge mistake. We're wanted a lot of places, but you're not going to be wanted if you show up at every family reunion every weekend. That's family. That's friends. Hi, I'm here. Yeah, I read about it on Facebook, and I just assumed I was invited, part of the family. You're not going to be welcomed. And the same thing is when you're trying to push your content for your church out through Facebook. That's not what Facebook is for. Facebook has changed all the rules, so it doesn't even work anyhow. But quite honestly, it's not appreciated. And the last thing is email. Now, most of you probably email is number one on your list. That's how I communicate to my congregation. I think email is only read now like 17%. So you're going to hit 17% of your people when you send an email, and then it's probably going to get filtered. It's going to it's hard to get through. Okay? So that's how I think is a great way. Now, this is probably out there. I thought about removing this because I know I'm at a Catholic audience, but I still think it could work because I know that YouVersion has Catholic translations. I went to a church that did this the other day, and I was totally amazed. That's why I travel to different churches. Just in a click. By the way, I changed subjects. I found a church that is 100% mobile. 100%. When you come in, they ask you to register as a new visitor. They ask for your smartphone number, and they tell you to please leave your phone on. And you go in, and the whole place is glowing blue because everybody's got their smartphone out, and every aspect of the service is connected. As the pastor preaches, his sermon notes come down to your smartphone. They're using YouVersion live for that. But everything else, your announcement for the bulletin, everything comes as a text. You know why? Text is there until you delete it. So the beauty is, when was that women's meeting later this week? Let me go to my text. Oh yeah, there it is, 7 o'clock. And if I need to register, I can click here. I mean, they do everything. So even as a new visitor, they push we'd like to have a record of your visit to your cell phone, and you can enter it if you want to and send back, and then it recognizes you, and you'll get a cup in the mail. Or I went to a church recently, and they gave a $5 Sonic card for your first visit and a $5 Quick Trip card for your second visit. I thought about getting all my family and friends to go, and we could probably get a dinner or a full tank of gas. I wasn't sure, but so YouVersion works this way. I went in, they said, take your cell phones. If you got your cell phones, go to YouVersion and look for a live event. That's all they said. So I'm like, my wife and I got our cell phones out and went to YouVersion, went down to settings, live event, and it popped up 2 churches that were close by, and one of them was a church we were visiting. We hit live event, and he goes, take your Bibles, here's the scripture was right there. And then as he preached his sermon, he had notes, and those notes appeared below the sermon. And then below each one of his points was an open window I could start adding my own notes. So I could say, I think that's pretty good, or I think this really applies. So you've seen everybody around there, they were like this, adding their own notes. And here's the deal. That's permanently attached to my YouVersion Bible, which, according to CC Mag, is the #1 way people are studying the Bible. So if you attended that church, and I know you guys have, the organization of what's going to be preached each week. That's one of the advantages. You walk into a Catholic church, and it's going to be the same. You're going to get Imagine that if, as you do that, and you use YouVersion in a year's time, you have all the sermon notes, all the points, and even your own context. So if you ever was going back to something, you'd have a previous sermon. You can see the previous sermon notes on that. You can see the points. Yes. So I don't think it works for everybody, but it was a really great way to make, again, the perception of personal communication. It added my own commentary to my own Bible. Yes.
You have, without a doubt, accomplished your goal of my head spinning. That's for darn sure.
Oh, we still got more.
But, I am most grateful to all of your comments and remarks here. Just 2 thoughts. The one, I think, is a Chinese proverb. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember, I do and I understand, and I think a lot of what you're saying there would fit that proverb. But then there's a book by Alan Lightman called The Diagnosis, and I think it was written late 80s, early 90s. He is a professor of English at MIT. And the whole setting of the book is this fella who's in middle management, and he's obsessed with money, time, and success. More than anything else, he wants to get up to upper management.
Right.
And the time is running out on him and things like that. But the title of the book is most revealing because his son and he communicate even though they're in adjoining rooms in the same house by texting and email. And he's saying that there's a spiritual consequence to that. That the human touch, I know the perception and personal communication is so important, but he's really raising, I think, educational issues, as you mentioned, faith issues, as you mentioned, and how, the last thing I remember that I can think of is Matthew's Gospel, where the wise steward is able to go to his or her storeroom and bring out the old and the new. If you could comment on how we can work with all this new technology and the traditional technology and blend them together.
Good question, good comment. There's actually a study by Pew Research. They wondered if with email and now with Facebook and social media as the way we connect, and I check Facebook every time, the average time a user's on Facebook is a ridiculous amount of time. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And I realized I check it. As soon as this is over, I'm going to check Facebook. Because I'm going to see if my son and daughter are going to the Royals game tonight or not. Is the weather's good? I'm going to see, I can check all kinds of stuff, and I'm interested in that. So Pew Research was wondering, and they did a research from the 60s, before the internet hit, what % of time do we spend in bars with friends? What % of time do we go to parks? What % of time do we eat out with friends? And remarkably, those numbers haven't changed. They just haven't changed. We still have that desire for the human touch, and so Facebook doesn't stop that. I'm also amazed as you are. I follow a family, and they got 3 girls, and it is amazing. One of them will post on Facebook to the other that mom says to turn your music down in your room, and then she's like, no, she did not, and then mom will post, yes, I did, and it's like, whoops. And we don't need to all know this. Why are you posting this on Facebook? There's so many other ways to communicate better, but. The fact of the matter is, so it is a combination. We still need that. Don't let me suggest, and the next thing I want to point out is even worse, I guess. Don't let me suggest that technology should be replacing the human touch, the human time. So far, it seems like when we have opportunities, we still get together. I'm building a tree house in my backyard because my grandkids are getting old enough. I want them to come over there and play in the tree house. I'm not programming a new game for them to play online or something like that. So there's still that desire. With that in mind, is this the future? Let me explain what you're looking at. Anybody ever, no one's there. It's funny. It's absolutely funny how we never admit to watching TV. If you have a priest or a pastor mention, he goes, well, I normally don't watch TV, but the other day I happened to jump into this, because, you know, we don't ever want to admit we're watching. There's a show called The Big Bang Theory, and Sheldon, there you go, some of you know, and Sheldon is this really incredible geek, and he invented this thing that you see in the middle, in the Big Bang, which I wondered at the time, did this company then copy it from him, or was this the first prototype? And basically, Sheldon discovered he could just stay in his room forever. He could stay in his room forever. He sent this thing to work. Now, that's motorized. The reason that it's a monitor with a camera and a mic, and that goes down, it's motorized. It's on a little platform. And so from home, he can control that motor. He can control the camera. So in a family reunion, he could roam right up to somebody and go, hey, I like your new haircut. How you guys been doing? He can actually interact and have that, but he's not there. He's at home with a mouse running this thing. And now there's a new company called Beam Pro, and they're pushing it. And corporations are grabbing it because international corporations, they got people in China, and they got people in Sweden, and they got people in Texas, are grabbing these things. So they're just sitting in a corner over here. And then when it's time for the meeting, the guy from China will activate one, and you can say, you're on. And the guy from Texas, and then they go, you know, and they go around the room. They can talk to people. When the message, they can turn and they can face. You can see them easier if they fall asleep. And they can, you know, they can ask questions and be a part of it. So they see, and other companies like that see, this is the future. Now, what have we done? We used to record the messages on cassette and take them to people's homes. Now a lot of churches put their messages online, which I'm suggesting you do on Facebook, simply so people can actually, not that they're going to watch the message on Facebook, I should have clarified that. You want to put your message on Facebook in your worship service immediately after the service so that people who are at the service know that if they have a question, or they have a comment, or thumbs up, or I didn't get this, they can go to Facebook and leave those comments Sunday afternoon. So it's personal, okay? I'm not suggesting people going to Facebook to watch the message. You need to come to church if they can. But what if they can't? What with an aging congregation, an aging family, is this not maybe the future? I don't know. But you would have these set up and people could do. I'll have one probably in 6 months at our house because the last couple Christmases we've had 1 or 2 sons that weren't there, and they're on the big screen TV on Skype. And all they can see is whatever the camera's pointing at, and you have to walk in the room and see them. One was serving in the military and was in Africa, and for an hour, for like 4 hours, he sat there with his iPhone and joined us. But man, if you could have a Beam Pro, that'd be cool. He could come in the kitchen. What's for dinner? You know, and that's the nice thing. All your guests won't get to really eat, and they won't bother your bathroom. So there's some advantages to this. I don't know. I'm not saying that I won't be around for this, but will churches one day have people join that way? I know they couldn't, partake of communion. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see. Okay, and then one last thing to really blow your mind on, and I'm serious. This is way out in the future. I kind of hope I'm not around, but it actually is going to get there. MIT has announced this year that they have moved up their prediction of when a computer becomes self-aware from 50 years from now to 30 years from now. Now, I'm telling you 10 years from now or 5 years from now, that number is going to be moved up again. So quite honestly, maybe in 15 years, 10 years, we may have a computer. It won't be a notebook or a tablet, don't worry, it'll be something much bigger, but we may have a computer that has the ability to become self-aware. Now, when it becomes self-aware, it'll have complete access to the internet. How do we define God? A couple of ways we define God is he's all-knowing and he's omnipresent. This computer reads those definitions, it may assume that it's God because it will know more than any of us will know because it'll be able to compute and obtain and retain all the information on the internet that we've put there. We've put everything we know about mankind, about theology. Every language, every culture now is on the internet. And if a computer becomes self-aware, it's going to have access to all that and will quickly become far more superior than anything a human can be. And then with the internet actually accessing everything, like all those stop lights cameras, and what if it accesses all of our Google Glasses, and what if it accesses everything on the internet? It'll be everywhere. It's just a thought. But if you're into eschatology, it's something to ponder. Will a computer become, now it can't be everything that God would be by our definition, but if it reads those two definitions, it may draw that conclusion that it is God based upon what we've said God is, because it'll have that ability. That's something to just go on, okay? Just something to think about for the future. And I don't know what I've got next. I like this, finally. In the United Kingdom, I always push for some sort of legislation everywhere I go. This year I'm pushing for this legislation. The United Kingdom just passed a law that says you have the right to digitally disappear. Man, we need that right in America. Because, you know, the data mining is a huge problem, okay? I'll give you, okay, they said I go 11:30, so I got a minute. Okay, in the United States, when credit bureaus came about, we had a Congress that worked, okay? So they said, well, listen, if there's going to be these 3 credit bureaus, we have to protect you. You have the right to request your credit bureau, now even for free, 1 time a year. And if there's something wrong in that credit bureau, you have the right to challenge it, and the credit bureau has 30 days to prove it or remove it. Credit bureaus aren't important no more. It's all about data mining. There's about 40 companies now that data mine, and all your information has been put together from everybody and everything. They know every time you've Google searched something, where you've gone, every time you've attended a website. That's why your ads, if you go to Twitter and put in Twitter, man, my computer's slow, and you will hear from Compaq and Dell on your Twitter in minutes, because they now have full, I think, Compaq has 35 full-time people who just monitor Twitter. I mean, everything is everywhere, okay? But and all these data mining are, so you want to get a new job, and you apply for a new job, or you want to get a new house, you apply for a new house, and you get turned down. Not on your credit, not on, you don't get the job, because they data mine, and you don't know what your data mine says, because the law says you don't have a right to ask. You have to pay $250 for every one of those 40 data mining companies to really get all your information and find out what they say. 60 Minutes did a deal on this. Person never could get a job. Discovered that data mine said he had a felony. He was a wanted felon in Texas. He'd never even been to Texas, and he wasn't a wanted felon. It was ridiculous. Another lady had financial trouble because data mining said she was a forecloser. She dated somebody for 6 months, broke up, and 2 years later, that person foreclosed on her house, but yet it went to them. We know this. Facebook does all kinds of stuff that's really criminal, that they shouldn't get away with, but one of those times when they turned off all your security and reset stuff, and you had to reset your security, during that lapse of time, they allowed banking associations to go through and grab all your friends. And then through data mining, they look at your friends, and now if a bank wants to consider you for a loan, they forget your credit score, they'll go over here and say, okay, how many of your friends pay their rent on time? How many of your friends are foreclosed on a house? How many of your friends own a house versus how many of your friends rent a house? And that information impacts you, and you don't have anything to say about it. Data mining is really messing us up in a big way, and United Kingdom passed a law that you can digitally disappear. Everybody has to remove your information if you request it, and Google can't even find you. I like that. I hope we can get something like that in America. That's my email address, and that's my web address for CC Mag. And again, you go to it, you just subscribe. We send you to it in PDF or a flash version every month for free, and you can read me there. I think I'm done. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.